There are two ways in which any government can proceed. One is a way based on what you and I would call a free society, which is enshrined right at the heart of the American Constitution. The other one is a way which allows only one view, both of economics and politics, in which almost everything is either owned or controlled by the state, including the media, including the ideas, including freedom of discussion and everything. There is no freedom of discussion. Now, between those two ways, the free society and the totally controlled society, there are, of course, variations. I think what we've learned in Britain is that we've gradually, over the last certainly 12 or 13 years, with perhaps a little interruption, gone slowly further and further away from the free society towards something else. At the same time, we've found, I don't find it strange, but some other people do, that we have stopped creating wealth. We've had a large number of increasing restrictions. And you've been finding two things. First, that we are more and more concentrating on redistributing the wealth we've got, rather than creating any more. To create more, you need a slightly freer society, and you need an incentive society. Naturally, when I see that happening, I look with very great alarm to societies which have gone even further left. That is, they've tried to redistribute even more and haven't had the incentives for people working hard on their own account, doing well for their families, and often then being able to create jobs for others. They've produced a much more prosperous society than we have.
We fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. This you have to see. This piece might seem minor to Americans, and it appears to be minor to some Canadians as well. It's, quite frankly, symptomatic of a government who believes they have the power to do anything. I want to say that again to my American friends. A government supposedly elected with the majority of the citizens who either voted for, or shall we say were eligible to vote, they believe that they can do anything. I want to give you some background. It may seem a little long-winded, but it's important for you to hear this. The Canadian citizens, were never told in this country, never told that a government that they would elect would hand over their sovereignty. That means, in simple, non-legal crap, the right of a nation to do what they think is right and proper for their nation, according to their nation's needs and wants. That's what sovereignty really means, nothing else. I honestly believe that if this self-proclaimed saviour of Canada had really been grilled at the time by the mainstream media during the last general election, that there is no doubt that he and his party never, and I mean never, would have seen the light of day. But organisations in Canada like CBC, which is government-funded television basically, covered up, sucked up to, and generally spawned all over this art teacher, an idiot, a moron, just like they did to Obama. They never asked him the difficult questions because he was a black American and they had to vote a black American in to be president. Well, in Canada, we have to vote for Trudeau because he's Trudeau, not because he's competent to do the job, but because he's Trudeau. Obama was elected President of the United States because he was black, not because he was competent, because he clearly wasn't. And time has proved that. But this is their game. In Canada, they control our media so totally and utterly. In every large city in Canada, the citizens are so dumbed down. Many people have said this, but nothing ever happens. It starts in schools. The educational system is completely corrupted by left-wing Trotskyites. I call a spade a spade. These people need to be thrown out on their ear. I'm more than happy to pay a one-off tax to ship all these idiots to Cuba. They're destroying Canada because Canadians are growing up not knowing anything about their own country, not knowing the history of their country, and not understanding what their country is about. It's all about issues and causes, not about people. As long as they have their hockey and their designer this and their designer that, they care nothing for the rest of Canada. Nothing. They are self-centered, selfish individuals for the most part. I want this, I want the latest iPhone, I want the latest Xbox. That's all they care about. It's so sad. If you look at these people, they are quite honestly pathetic. And it's not just Canada, it's virtually in every Western country. Because this is what the left have been doing for the last 30 to 40 years. I went back to university when I was nearly 40. Now, I couldn't be brainwashed. And they got so angry with me because of my point of view. They couldn't justify theirs, but they wouldn't listen to mine. Now that is brainwashing. Recently, I watched this guy, I think it's called Campus or something, going around the American campuses for universities, asking questions to these know-nothing students who would be future captains of industry and commerce in America. And I'm sure, like me, you just shook your head with utter dismay. They are paying tens of thousands of dollars a year for an education. I ask myself this, what education? If you can't sit down and hear the other side, to hear an alternative view, how can you make a determined decision? You don't have all the facts. But this is what we're up against today. One-sided view on everything. I made a comment the other day that I agreed with Bernie Sanders. Well, I did on one particular issue. What's wrong with that? But these people, they hate Donald Trump. They've no idea why, but they've been told, they've been brainwashed. Donald Trump equals evil. But they can't explain why. Because they're dumb. They're ill-educated automatons. Now, if you're old enough, and I am not old enough, I'm sorry, I remember when Jay Leno was on TV, and he used to go around the streets of LA asking questions of ordinary, everyday Americans. And you remember the answers. They were ridiculous. Well, ditto Canada. The people here are so dumbed down, they have no idea at all. They've never heard of the opposition party in Canada. Let me give you a bit of background. We have three parties here, principally. They are the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP. The Conservatives call themselves something extra, but they're Conservatives. That's Republicans to my American friends. NDP stands for National Democratic Party or Socialist Light. The majority of people who are stopped in the street here have no idea about politics. Reminds me of a family member of mine. Oh, I've no interest in that. Well, you bloody well should have. And if they do, they can't even name all the parties. All they know is the Prime Minister is Trudeau, and he's doing a great job. We need more protection for gay groups. We need more free stuff. Literally, that's what they say. Oh, and when you ask them who you voted for, most of them say Liberal. And when asked why, the top answer is because they always have. The second top answer is I like what they're doing. When asked what that is, they can't say. They have no idea what's happening to the economies of other provinces. And quite frankly, they don't care. I'll give you an example. They don't care about Alberta. Alberta is the oil province, is where our oil comes from, is trying to be shipped down south and across the country as well. They don't even know, for the most part, that that province that's being run into the ground is being run by a socialist party, the NDP. And one person even answered that question, what they liked about the Liberals. I voted Liberal because I liked Trudeau's hair. I kid you not, because I liked his hair. Very few could name the opposition party, that being the Conservatives. And some even thought it was the NDP. And those who could name the opposition party, even fewer could name the leader of that party. So that's where we are in Canada. So I wanted to give you this information. And bearing that in mind, most Canadians seem to be mindless automatons. That's why most of them don't even seem to either know or care that rights and freedoms, their rights and freedoms, are being undermined by the very party they claim to support. And I would go further. I doubt whether the majority of Canadians even know that the Charter of Rights exists. I'm serious. I really don't think they know it. But if they do, I doubt very much if they understand what it really means. And I'm damn sure they don't hold it in such reverence as Americans do the US Constitution. And with that in mind, I want to give you this. The Federal Liberal Government of Canada have ever so quietly put this on an official government website, inferring that it is the law of the land. No bill has been passed, no referendum has been issued, just a decree. Here it is. The Government of Canada embraces the universality, there's no such word by the way, of the 2030 Agenda. That's Agenda 2030. And it is committed to supporting the implementation of SDGs in Canada and internationally. Working with its partners, Canada is striving to end poverty, inequality, build more prosperous and peaceful societies, and protect the planet. For Canada, an inclusive approach to domestic implementation of SDGs will need to span a cross-section of Canadian society in order to truly leave no one behind. This is particularly applicable to those groups who are marginalised or otherwise vulnerable, which includes Indigenous people, that's Indians, women, girls, migrants, refugee populations, people with disabilities, individuals identifying them with LGBTQ2 community. I swear to God, these people are completely loony. Many of the Government of Canada's priorities and programs, both domestically and internationally, are already well aligned with Agenda 2030. Through its focus on the poorest and most vulnerable, including women and girls, Canada's Feminist International Assistance Policy supports the main principle of Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, which is to ensure that no one is left behind in the achievement of SDGs. New resources and tools for international assistance announced in the budget of 2018 will help partner countries working toward achieving all of the SDGs. By prioritising gender equality and empowerment of all, Women and Girls supports SDG 5, gender equality, as well as the achievement of all other SDGs. Consistent with the Government of Canada's commitment to advance the work of reconciliation, renewing Canada's relationship with and outcomes for Indigenous peoples, that's Indians to you, supports multiple SDGs including SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 4, good quality education, SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, SDG 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. By strengthening, growing the middle class, Canada supports SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 10, reduced inequalities. Canada's 2016 to 2019 Federal Sustainable Development Strategy, which sets out Canada's sustainable development priorities, is linked to many SDGs, including SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, SDG 13, climate action, SDG 14, life below water, SDG 15, life on land. Canada's support for pan-Canadian framework on clean growth and climate change, investments in clean economic growth, and investments in international climate finance all contribute to SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, and SDG 13, climate action. Furthermore, in Budget 2018, the Government of Canada announced it would provide $49.4 million over 13 years to establish an SDG unit and fund monitoring and reporting activities by Statistics Canada. This will enable better coordination among all levels of government, civil society organisations and private sector on Canada's efforts on Agenda 2030 for sustainable development. What a bloody mouthful. It will also support the monitoring and reporting of Canada's domestic international efforts to ensure that all SDGs are achieved by 2030 and that no one is left behind, the Government of Canada is proposing to provide all existing departmental resources up to $59.8 million over 13 years for programming to support the implementation of the SDGs. Finally, on July 17, 2018, Canada presented its first voluntary national review report at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum in New York, which highlights Canada's progress and action plan to achieve Agenda 2030 for sustainable development at home and abroad. Well, if you're not stunned, I am. I want to end with this. Not this government or any government of Canada has now or in the future has either the constitutional power or the authority to implement such a policy. Let me put that into English. It's illegal, and they know it. This can only be done in Canada by amending our charter, and to do that, it's a very steep mountain to climb, and they know that too. I think Canadians should put all parties in the House of Commons on notice. They are all complicit with allowing any government to implement such a policy without discussion and agreement first sought through and only through our charter. This policy, this agreement by the Prime Minister of Canada is quite frankly unconstitutional. And further, the Supreme Court of Canada have failed utterly in their prime duty, that of protecting the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Any parliament that allows a Prime Minister of any party to subjugate its citizens has failed in its oath of office. This Prime Minister has committed a treasonous act, and in that case is not fit to hold the office or represent any citizens of this nation. I believe it's that serious. It's a treasonous act. I challenge any party to stand up and challenge this Prime Minister and this government for the unconstitutional acts against the citizens of Canada. And that's my comment. And I hope that's Canadian content enough for you. My final comment is this. Laws are simple. It's only that we citizens allow lawyers to write them. Let me give you an example. This is a template for a law. You can do this, but you can't do that. That's it. Life really is that simple. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab and email. We're also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on these links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio, and click on the like button. And you can hear a review of our morning moments on WHBJ-DB, News Talk Radio on Spreaker.com. Join us and many others. And you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.